Holy City Center Radio is episode 208, and I am your host, Christian Sanger. Today is Wednesday, January 10th, 2024. Before we talk about the wet Wednesday weather and the school board drama-o-rama that continues here into 2024, I must first say a big happy birthday to my mom, who is celebrating today, January 10th. Happy birthday, Mom. I love you very much. I know you might not hear this podcast for a couple weeks, but when you hear it, you'll hopefully be happy to know that I gave you a happy birthday live on the podcast, as it were, on your actual birthday. I say that because my folks, they listen to my podcast when they can, which is really kind of them to do. They know a good bit about Charleston, having, visited many, many times over the years. They follow a little bit of the news, and obviously they'll check in on Holy City Center stuff and the podcast. So they've gotten to know a good amount about the city and things. So, I know some of my friends sometimes have said, "Hey, I'll give your podcast a listen." I'm like, "Hey, feel free," but it's all about Charleston, and it can especially get into some really boring details about politics and stuff. So I don't expect it. So it's nice of them to listen, and they always support. So I appreciate it. So happy birthday, Mom. Now, yes, a lot of things have happened since the last podcast. Of course, came out on Monday. That was a crazy day. President Joe Biden visited the area. The highlight was him being at Mother Emanuel AME Church, where he gave a speech, condemned white supremacy, at the location, of course, where famously just a handful of years ago, there was a attack carried out by a white supremacist. He also, of course, this was a campaign speech as well. So talking about democracy being at stake, pretty much what we expected going into it. No real big surprises came out of it. There was some criticism of him having the event there. Some felt it was inappropriate for varying reasons, but one of the biggest was some people's belief that his support of Israel is leading to a genocide of some of the people in Palestine. And so there were some protesters outside the building, and some actually got into the event and started to shout at one point, but they were drowned out by some people in the congregation, and then were quickly escorted out by police, security, what have you. So other than that, it was pretty uneventful. Around the same time, William Cogswell went from mayor-elect to mayor officially of Charleston. So congratulations to him and his team, and also congratulations to the new city council members who were also there for the swearing in and inauguration ceremony. Following that, there was a celebration event of sorts in Washington Square. So again, congratulations to William Cogswell. He is now officially the mayor. And how does he get to celebrate? With a crazy winter storm that comes in, but I didn't even get a press release about, a lot of times with these events, you'll get something from that team, his remarks that he made during the swearing in, some puff piece maybe about how great of a day it was and how he's looking for. They didn't even have time for that kind of stuff. They had to get right into it. The first press release I received from his team as the official mayor of Charleston was about how the city was preparing for the storm. So trial by fire. I'm sure now former mayor John Tecklenburg assisted in the transition process, as did members of his team and other employees that, serve for the city. And I'm sure he had some assistance to prepare for these things, as well as his own preparation, but trial by fire, as it were. As for the storm, I am recording this during it. It just started to pick up again, had some pretty strong winds. It may be dying down where I am now. I know there's still going to be a lot of rain, but I'm not hearing those big wind gusts I was hearing. I don't have a lot to report on. I know at last check, Live 5 News was saying over 40,000 people were without power. If you were one of those folks, I am so sorry. Hopefully it's not out for a long time. Knock on wood, the area I live in is good for two reasons during storms. One, the complex I'm in doesn't really ever seem to flood, at least not in a significant way. And also, we very rarely lose power in storms. And when we do, it's usually returns fairly quickly. Now that I just jinxed myself, and this podcast will probably cut out in the middle of it. But so far, so good, and I hope you're weathering the storm, no pun intended, and it didn't go too poorly for you. If you need any assistance post-storm, whether it's trees being down, debris, clean, whatever, anything you feel like falls under the purview of the city or county you live in, be sure to visit those respective websites are always good about having important phone numbers to call, online forms that you can fill out for storm damage assessment. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with these things already. So been a little crazy as we, had these couple of days between the podcasts. So that's the latest there. If anything happens after I record in regards to the storm, as usual, I will just cover it in a later podcast. So speaking of this podcast, the last one, we had some buildup and stories, backup of stories because of Christmas and New Year's. So I was kind of able to have some themed shows these last two episodes, with Monday being all kind of good news stuff, Best of Charleston, restaurants opening, new concert series coming to the Citadel. If you missed it, you need some good news, some more fun stuff, go back and listen. This one is going to be focused on the Charleston County School District Board, which you are all familiar, especially if you listen to this podcast, with the drama-o-rama that they have been going through for a year plus now, with the majority of the members being Moms for Liberty backed candidates. We don't need to rehash all of that. It's been talked about ad nauseum on this podcast, and you can go look up stories yourself for some of the dysfunction that's been going on. But there's a couple updates that have happened since the little break from Christmas and New Year's for me, so I want to get into those right now. I've talked on the podcast a lot, as I said, about the Charleston County School District Board and the kind of follies and dysfunction and incompetence. Some of those words are simply my opinion, but also shared by others. I've talked about it a lot, and not just the culture wars and, how they may have been skirting state law, whether that was intentional or not. It's just, to me, it was more than likely they weren't intentionally trying to break state law with some of the ways they were handling meetings and things. It seems it was just more ignorance. And how I've always said, there are a lot of these candidates, if not all of those Moms for Liberty backed candidates, are not serious about their job. They came in off this wave of culture wars and really didn't know how to lead, how to govern, for lack, they're not governors, but how to do their jobs, basically. And when that happens, I'm sure, with even people who are really serious and had more than one platform that they ran on. And there's a learning curve. However, it seems there was a bigger learning curve with them for two reasons. One, like I said, it seemed they really just were trying to ride in on this parental rights thing. And also the fact that there was many of them that were coming to the table at the same time, and they were more concerned about getting their way than following proper protocols, etc. And we've talked about that clear issues that leads to, and how that's not serving the school district, and more importantly, not serving the students of that school district. We've also talked about the cost of all of this dysfunction and how they bungled the superintendent search. And a new story came out that's focused specifically on the money that the district has spent on lawyers, lawsuits, and legal advice. So just in the legal realm, in the last fiscal year, which covers July 2022 through June 2023, the district spent more than $1.4 million on legal services. So in 1 year, they spent over $1 million in legal services. This transparency report that the district put out shows that that's up from about $1 million from the year before, and nearly twice as much as the year before that, when legal fees cost the district around $800,000. So it keeps going up and up and up. And of course, this year was, no surprise, the biggest one out of the last 3 fiscal years because of everything that's happened. Obviously, this is concerning. It's good that this report comes out. A couple of the board members expressed surprise by how high that number was. You won't be surprised to know that the one person quoted in the article that was surprised by all this was one of the Moms for Liberty back candidates, because, again, not serious about their job, not really concerned with the little details or the fallout from their decisions. But one board member, I think, really encapsulated it perfectly. Darlene Dunmeyer Roberson, first of all, saying that these legal expenses are getting out of hand, saying that they're unacceptable, and that it's not just a number. It's what she said, quote, a glaring symptom of the mindset driving recent decisions and actions taken by our board and district leadership. The district's spending on legal fees is just one stark reminder of how far we've strayed from our duty to be prudent with the public's trust and funds, end quote. I think that right there explains it perfectly. $1.4 million the last fiscal year on legal related funds, and the vast majority of that could have been avoided. And if you need, a reminder on how that could have been, you can go back to old episodes of the podcast. You can visit the link in the show notes, look up old stories, and just see how much they bungled so much this past fiscal year. And one example of that is our next story. Well, we just talked about $1.4 million in legal fees. Not about to stop anytime soon. A Wisconsin man who claims he was supposed to serve as interim chief of schools for Charleston County is suing the district for breach of contract and negligent representation. This is according to a lawsuit that was filed here. Dale Burns, the deputy chief of high schools for the Racine, Wisconsin Unified School District, which actually is the same district that former Charleston County School District Superintendent Eric Gallion came from, is suing the district for failing to honor an employment agreement that was offered to him in July. So Gallion, who was the superintendent not for very long for Charleston County School District, had sent a letter to Burns on July 18th this past year, confirming Burns' assignment as interim chief. Burns was anticipated to serve in the temporary position through June 30th of this year, so 2024. He was going to have an annual salary, if you're wondering, of $195,000. Gallion reiterated in the letter that this position was temporary and encouraged Burns to apply when and if the district decided to make the role permanent. Burns accepted the offer, notified his employer at the time that he'd be leaving the Racine School District, and made plans to move his family to Charleston. He said about this possible job, he was excited about the move. He was excited to meet new people, learn the new system, and he, in this lawsuit, describes a sense of comfort with CCSD. Burns goes on in the lawsuit to allege that Gallion, the now acting superintendent Anita Huggins, chief human resources officer William Brigman, and other district employees knew that the offer had been sent to him in July. And he also said in the suit that at least one school board member knew that as well. Andy Pruitt, who is the CCSD spokesman, said that the letter of agreement that Burns received was premature. His explanation for that was that on May 18th, the board decided the superintendent was not allowed to make any organizational changes without an explicit vote from the board. An effort on July 17th to rescind the motion and allow the superintendent to make those organizational changes failed by a vote of 5-4. No surprise, Moms for Liberty has that advantage, and that's the number that came up. The letter that was sent to Burns was dated for the following day. So there does appear to be a situation where, because of the date of the letter, that this lawsuit may not hold water, but we'll see what the court decides. Regardless, this is just another example of, if things were done in a more appropriate manner and there wasn't so much confusion and misleading and other things, this is a fee that they could have avoided so easily, much like some of these other, legal fees that they've had because of how poorly they've operated. So we'll see where this lawsuit goes, but it's just the most recent example of how their actions, and again, it may turn out that it's ruled in their favor, but that doesn't change the fact that just because they might not have, they might get away on this little technicality of sorts, And again, this is my opinion. I'm not a lawyer, and this is a little convoluted, and it's tough to follow, especially when we're talking about the dysfunction with the board. And it was hard to know, like, wait, did this meeting, because the attorney general in South Carolina said they didn't follow the appropriate guidelines for the meeting, does that mean these decisions they made count? They don't count. So let's just say everything goes the board's way, the district's way, they get out of this lawsuit, they're not found at fault. It doesn't change the fact that their confusion led to this point, and their dysfunction and not knowing procedures and rules and miscommunications with the superintendent that they hired. That's what ultimately got them to this point, even if, again, they didn't actually end up doing anything against the law. So just another example as we start this new year. But we're not done. One last story. This one is more of politicians in the state getting sick of stories like these. There is now proposed legislation that would give state leaders in South Carolina more oversight when it comes to the school boards. South Carolina State Representative Joe Bustos, who's a Republican, and by the way, has been one of the few Republicans in the state, although it's more than you would think, because we know how parties can be in this day and age. He is one of a handful of Republicans who have been pretty vocal about how the school board hasn't been, following proper procedures. They're not actually helping students. They're too focused on culture wars, et cetera, et cetera. So he's actually the one who pre-filed this bill. And he said it would require a team from either the State Department of Education or the Inspector General to inspect school boards every 2 years to ensure they are in compliance with state laws and their own district policies. Now, according to the South Carolina State House website, the bill has been referred to the Committee on Education and Public Works. Yes, so that means it's working its way through. Who knows if it will get any traction as we get this legislative session started shortly. So we'll see where the bill goes. But this seems like common sense. School boards have kind of been able to do what they want. And this isn't new, this dysfunction and problems. There's been other examples in past years. So it's not just the Moms for Liberty thing that's been going on. This would allow every 2 years, as I said, to just have a look over it, just to say, hey, are you following proper protocols? Just kind of a review. And it's good that it's, someone not within that school board or that district that will handle it. This is going to be someone else in the state, again, the Department of Education or the Inspector General, who would review these things. And there's never anything wrong with that. Having just a separate set of eyes, make sure everything is going smoothly. That way public trust is not eroded. And more importantly, laws are not being broken. Children, aren't suffering because of really poor decisions or, money being lost to lawsuits and things like that. So, although I haven't read the entire text of the bill and it could dramatically change, how Bustos has described it seems like common sense and seems to make sense to me. Again, got to have the details worked out, got to know what's finalized after it goes through committees and everything. But on the surface, it seems to be pretty good. Now, Bustos did say that one of the main focuses of this legislation is school safety. So that's like a kind of the biggest point of this legislation, which I think may help it pass. So it's not just this, hey, you guys have been screwing up, we're going to come in and punish you, you're bad people. It's not meant to be that. It's just like, hey, you know what? This is the latest example of things that haven't gone exactly the way they're necessarily supposed to. Maybe we should add a second step here. Maybe we need just one more review of things, just another set of eyes on it. So that's more of the spirit of the bill. So I hope with that focus and the fact that it's coming from a Republican, that people who may have worried, that, a Democrat filed this is just to try to kick out people they don't agree with. Hopefully they'll realize the true spirit of what this bill seems to be anyway. And we'll see what happens. I'll be sure to keep you posted on that. So that'll do it for another themed episode, School Board Drama-O-Rama, of Holy City Center Radio on Friday. We'll see if we stick to it. Well, it all depends on what's happening in the news. I still have some old stories that may be of interest to you all that won't be, too out of date by Friday. So we'll see what happens. But as usual, don't miss any episodes. Go ahead and subscribe to this podcast. If you have a moment, like it, rate it, review it. all those fun things. That helps out. You can also go to patreon.com/holycitysinner to sign up for one of those support tiers. Another free and easy way to support Holy City Sinner and this podcast is to vote in the upcoming Best of Charleston Awards. The nomination period is open right now. The more details on that in the last episode and on my website. Speaking of holycitysinner.com, hope you're enjoying the new look to it, continuing to update it every day, as I always have, but hopefully you're enjoying this new setup. I've been getting good feedback about it. And also be sure to check out mylowcountry.com, MYLO, lowcountry.com. I know the low back to back can be a little confusing. That is now Holy City Sinner's sibling site, with more news on that to come. Thank you to Lindsay Marie Collins for producing this and every episode of Holy City Sinner Radio. And of course, Tyler Boone, whose music you hear in each and every show. And a big thank you to all of you for listening. I greatly appreciate it. I hope you stayed safe during the storm. I hope everything is going well for you this week. I can't wait to talk to you all again on Friday. But until then, good night and good luck.